What's going on, SoFi investors? I haven't yet had a chance to watch Anthony Noto go on Mad Money and talk to Jim Cramer. There's a little clip of the video on YouTube. I'm not sure what the big one is, but I haven't found it yet. So I'm going to watch this little clip and give my reaction to it, where I think SoFi can go next week. Remember, next Friday is Good Friday, so the markets are closed. So we have a short week in the markets, only Monday through Thursday this week. So I'll give you my opinions on where I think SoFi is going to go this week. Are we going to continue this momentum from last week? Stick around. Let's check out Jim Cramer and Anthony Noto on Mad Money.
You heard what I said, which is that people just feel that after the great run, and it was a great run, after the really terrific outlook you gave, after the stock was moving up, that you yourself hurt the stock, and it went down big, and people feel badly that they bought it at 9, only to find out that, well, something was wrong at SoFi.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand why we did the convertible deals, why we did the buyback, and the benefits to shareholders that I don't think are truly understood by the market.
Well, this is your chance.
The first point is we did this deal from a position of strength. We just had a record 2023, over $2.1 billion of revenue, up over 30%, 40% growth in our members, our first quarter of GAAP profitability, over $400 million of EBITDA generation, and gave an outlook that was going to be for full year positive GAAP profitability in 2024, as well as continued strong growth in our tech platform, as well as our financial services business. And we're going to be more cautious on the personal loan business. What we saw was an opportunity from that position of strength was to lower our cost of debt. We had two pieces of debt that were quite expensive. One we did in 2019. It is a Series 1 preferred that pays 12.5% interest.
That's so good.
5 years after we issue it, we can buy it back in May. If we don't buy it back in May, we'll have to not just pay 12.5% interest, but it actually goes up to 15% interest for the next 5 years, and we can't buy it.
Okay, so in other words, it wasn't like you could play around. If you tried to think that maybe we'll go to 12 and we got to May, you would have, and it didn't go to 12, you could have been hurt. It was not like the risk was, hey, listen, it could go up to 20 here. It was the opposite, which is that you had to get this piece done.
Well, I would put it this way. We saw it as an opportunity to do it and have a negligible impact on GAAP earnings per share, and also combined with a buyback, have it be accretive.
But did you
by
think
8
the stock
to 10,
was going to get crushed like this?
Let me finish. Have it be accretive to tangible book value per share by 8 to 10%.
Okay.
When you do a convertible, there is pressure on the stock from investors shorting the stock against the convertible. It's a delta hedge. That does happen. So there is typically 5 to 10% decline. But the reason why we did it is really important, because I think this is what will put some momentum back into the stock. First is we had this 12.5% debt. We also had another piece of debt that's about $500 million that we pay 7% on. So we're going to save between $40 and $60 million of interest expense a year by refinancing from 12.5% down to 1.25%, where the convert is, and from 7% down to 1.25%.
That little interview was only about 3 minutes long, but we got a ton of information about SoFi and their $750 million worth of convertible notes that they just issued a few weeks ago. Okay, so pretty much they had two really big pieces of debt. One for $750 mil and the other one was for $500 mil. But they were both at crazy interest rates. The $500 mil was at 7.5% and the $750 mil was at 12.5%. So what they did was they refinanced those big interest rate loans to 1.25%. They had to do that, guys. There was no other way around it. I mean, would you rather them have to pay 12.5%? And from what Anthony Noto said was, if they didn't pay it back by May, that 12.5% rate goes up to 15%, and they can't buy it back for 5 additional years. This is a no-brainer. You get the $750 million loan from 12.5% and possibly 15%, refinanced it down to 1.25%. And then the $500 mil loan also goes down to 1.25%. Anyone who tells you that this is a detriment to SoFi and their business is completely full of shit. It's going to save them between $40 and $65 million in interest payments every single year. So even if you're in the middle, that's $50 million that you're saving. I'd rather that go towards the bottom line, get those EPS numbers a little bit better, each and every quarter. Anthony Noto mentioned that they did this move from a position of strength. And honestly, even if they weren't in such good financial strength, they still should have did this move. $750 million going from 12.5% to 15% for the next 5 years, and you can't touch it. You have to do this. You're going to save so much money every single year. It's an absolute no-brainer, and anyone that tells you otherwise has no idea what they're talking about. So, why is the stock down so much then? Like he said, when you do convertible notes, there's usually about 8 to 10% in downward pressure. That brings us from like $10, $9.50 to $8.50 and $9. The next thing that Anthony Noto mentioned was a delta hedge. So they see that this company issued $750 million worth of convertible notes. It's going to go down 10%. So then the shorts start piling in. They start piling. And then that puts more downward pressure on the stock. And then retail, unfortunately, SoFi has a ton of retail investors in it right now, way more than institutions, which is not a great thing. And then retail starts to see the stock really, really slide, and then they sell. So you get all three of those things bringing downward pressure on the stock. To me, I see this as a great buying opportunity. Uber did a very similar thing, and if you look at Uber's chart over the last year and a half, we've seen that sharp decline when they issued the notes, and then a very steady increase in stock price for months after months after months. So, in my opinion, I think the stock's going to bounce back. We should be in the $8 range over the next few weeks. We had a solid week last week. And one more thing I want to talk about, the delta hedge. So a delta hedge is a short-term short position, right? So these shorts got to know when to get out. And did we start to see that last week as SoFi kind of went up 5 to 6% in the week? So with a delta hedge, you got to get out fast because people are going to see that as a buying opportunity, and then we're going to start to get positive pressure back on the stock. So the shorts could start bailing on their short positions, and that's going to give us positive reinforcement on the stock price, and we could see the stock price run back up over the next few weeks. So where do I think SoFi ultimately ends up at the end of the year? I'm thinking between 11 and 13 bucks by the end of the year, depending on what happens with Powell. If we don't do any interest rate cuts, there's going to be more downward pressure on a stock like SoFi. But it looks like from last week, they're pricing in 3 rate cuts by the end of this year, about 1% off of where we're currently trading at now in that 5 to 5.25% interest rate. They want to get around 4% by the end of the year, so that's a good thing for SoFi investors. If that comes to fruition and we get those rate cuts, we're going to see some positive momentum for the stock. Maybe 12, 13 bucks by the end of the year. High end around 15 bucks. So what I'm doing in the $7 range, you got to add more. If you believe in SoFi and Anthony Noto and their mission, and you believe in the company, and if you see they're continuing to execute on the top and bottom line, it's a no-brainer to add at these positions. I'm adding a little bit. I mean, I'm not telling you to go buy SoFi stock, but it's a good position to be in when the stock's in $7 range. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. If you like these kind of videos, let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Thanks again, guys. Peace.